Cal Thomas and all the reporters and the Rush Limbaughs and the Bill Maher's and all those guys out there, all these media folks that somehow seem to be making the news as much as reporting it, shaping the culture as much as using it. And they're all telling us that we're merely reporters of reality when we know they're actually making it at the same time. People who are exercising power without believing it or confessing to it. This is a problem. But this is not what I'm going to talk about today. And finally, the ones that go on and on since the beginning of time and seem never to end, the persistence of racism, the vehemence of homophobia, the indifference to poverty in this country, to absolute ignorance by government, media, business, and yes, even the religious folks. This is appalling, utterly appalling, and yet this too is not the problem with America. These are all symptoms of the problem that I have with my country. So as I pondered what I was trying to say, I got to tell you, an image came to mind. Our city, as you yourself can see, is badly shaken. She cannot raise her head from above the depths of so much surging death. Disease infects fruit blossoms in our land. Disease infects our herds of grazing. Cattle makes women in labor lose their children, and deadly pestilence, that fiery god, swoops down to blast the city. So says the priest at the beginning of Oedipus the King, Sophocles' famous play. It's actually Oedipus Tyrannos. I'll get to that in a minute. You know the story, right? Oedipus was the son born of Laius and Jocasta, whom a prophet says will grow up to murder his father and marry his mother. Horrified at these prospects, the two greatest crimes in the ancient world, they hobble his feet and put him out on a hillside to expose him in infanticide. By the way, Oedipus means club foot, Oedipus. But he's rescued by an unknowing shepherd who takes them down into another valley where he is brought up as the royal son, adopted of another family, goes off in seeking his fortune, runs across a man in a chariot who says, "Get out of my way." And he won't, and they have a battle, and Oedipus, being the younger, kills the older man, who we all know is his real father. He then meets the Sphinx, who is besetting the city of Thebes, who asks him a riddle that he successfully is able to answer, and thus releases the city of Thebes from its captivity, arrives in the town, and is fated as the savior, offered the crown to the city because obviously the king is gone, promptly marries the queen, his mother, and in response, the city experiences this plague that you just heard about. Sophocles, when he tells this story, knows everyone in town already knows this. His play is not about the plot, it's about the person. Oedipus Tyrannos means Oedipus the great leader. And it's a tragedy about a man who is confident in his leadership. Told about this great plague, he says that he will save the city. He swears vengeance on the murderer, swearing he will usher him out of the kingdom, thinking himself innocent and being given this great charge. He says, as Sophocles writes, "I pray whoever the man is who did this crime, one unknown person acting on his own or with companions, the worst of agonies will wear out his wretched life. I pray too that if he should become an honored guest in my own home, and with my knowledge I may suffer all those things I've just called down upon the killers. I possess the ruling power which Laius held in earlier days. I have his bed and wife. So now I will fight on his behalf as if this matter concerned my father, and I will strive to do everything I can to find him, the man who spilled his blood, and thus avenge." And he does just that. And the world comes apart. Why is this about the problem with America? Because the problem with America is the problem that Sophocles is talking about. It is pride. And I don't mean the pride of our president, although you can use this story to your benefit if you'd like. I mean not the powers and principalities of government or business or even the righteous religious right. It is the blithe and ignorant pride that put so many Americans in the position that they put "proud to be an American" on their bumper sticker, A phrase which, like support the troops, as Noam Chomsky puts, has no semantic meaning whatsoever. It is a kind of patriotism that, unleashed, becomes Oedipal in its context, whose motives are good, which does not intend evil, but in thinking itself good, fails to realize that every act has consequences, not always anticipated, and especially those with great power can have actions that have enormous consequences. Did you notice what Arnold Toynbee said in your order of worship this morning? America is a large, friendly dog in a very small room. Every time it wags its tail, it knocks over a chair. America is powerful. It likes being powerful, and it has great power, but it assumes that its greatness and its goodness are synonymous, that whatever it does is good, and whatever it does well, it must be doing for the right. It is a thoughtless patriotism that is destroying the country. The problem with America is pride. This pride that we do not even realize is killing us, that is a version of self-righteousness, not the self-righteousness of the religious right. That's just, let's call that an overexposed version of American patriotism. I'm talking about the generalized patriotic notion that we learn about as manifest destiny. Remember that when we all went to high school? That we were destined to rule from coast to coast. Where did we get that manifest destiny? Taming the wilderness as though it were somehow in need of taming. Civilizing the savage. Keeping those poor, unfortunate people from Africa from feeling left out. Yeah, there is so much that's good about this country. It is almost mind-boggling. It is amazing. But so are the things that are wrong. And yet we so often dismiss the bad, decry it, call it unpatriotic, when the very thing that makes us good people is the willingness to say, are we living up to who we say we are? You remember that phrase that we were told years ago, my country, right or wrong? That was a big thing back in the 60s when the protest movement was strong. Well, that's a really old sentiment, by the way. It goes way back, and it's much larger than that. If you read the whole context, my country, right or wrong, meaning it's my country, whether it's right or wrong. You have an obligation to sustain its health, no matter whether it be right or wrong. But G.K. Chesterton observed later on that saying my country, right or wrong, is a little bit like saying my mother, drunk or sober. And I thought about that image and said, well, guess what? If that's true and your mom says, let's go for a ride in the car, and she's drunk, wouldn't you take away the keys? Yes, she's still your mother, but that doesn't mean you'll let her drive the entire family around in a state of inebriation. What I'm trying to say is that as a culture, we are supremely unreflective people. We don't think about being Americans. We only are proud of being Americans. We have emotions. We don't have thoughts. Patriotism for us is like religion. And it's religious in the sense that it's fervent and devout and honest and is without doubt. And to question it is somehow to be faintly unfaithful to your nation. So it is a religion in a way. That's because America is mostly an idea. Mostly. It's the first nation I know that was founded on principle rather than on blood. It came into being because of those inalienable rights we read about, and that we have a constitution in order to form a more perfect union. It endured a civil war, as the man said, so that government of the people, by the people, and for the people should not perish. We are America because of ideas.